Sorry. We have something that, and thank goodness we have the gentleman here who is our guest, because the discussion is about military legal rights. And we're always pleased to have him in the studio because not only is he one of our sponsors, but he is just one of the most knowledgeable people around when we talk about this kind of thing, as most of you know. And we always welcome Attorney Steve Seidman. Consular, how are you today?
I'm fine, thanks, Cliff.
Good.
Thanks for having me again.
Oh, absolutely. Pleasure, always. Listen, there's so many things. I'm not going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Because I never get to everything.
Right.
So you, being the expert that you are on the issues, just start off, tell us what an issue is and tell us where we're going.
Sounds
Can
good.
you do that?
Okay. Lots happened since we started this thing this year.
Mm-hmm.
Let's first start off with the earplugs. You might remember those 3M earplugs that were allegedly defective. Lots of actions over those. These were from veterans who served in the military who unfortunately lost their hearing, thinking that they actually had good ear protection, and in fact did not have good ear protection. Started off, as you might recall, with what we call qui tam, a whistleblower lawsuit. The 3M people settled that, and that led to a lot of what we call discovery and things that came out in the open about what Arrow, who 3M purchased, knew and didn't know about the plugs, the earplugs and hearing protection that they were giving to the active service that were unfortunately ineffective. Well, there's all kinds of actions that are being brought for the earplugs, and we have been honored enough to represent many veterans on those. And at the present time, I thought I'd give you an update on that, that they're fighting, if we want to call it legally fighting, over the access of plaintiffs, the people who were hurt or lost their hearing, to get access to the testing records for 3M's other earplugs. And each individual plaintiff is to give their individual history and medical records relating to their hearing loss to the defendant. Cases are still able to be filed, but the window is starting to close, and they have to be careful, the people who bring these cases, to decide where they're going to do it, because certain states, it's too late already, such as North Carolina and Alabama, and if they try there, they will have missed the deadline. You can file the case where the people live, so in case you're an Illinois resident, or the location of the training in the states. And many times we see the Marines choosing California. The Armies often choose Missouri. But regardless, don't let your rights close. All right? This is a serious problem and has been out there for a while. So that's the update that is going on with the earplug cases. The next thing, and
let me interrupt you, Steve, just 1 second. I should have mentioned that our call-in number is 312-374-8130, 312-374-8130. Thank you, Steve.
No problem. Yeah. The next thing or discussion point for today is something that we've talked about many of the shows, and that has been the Ferris Doctrine. That's F-E-R-E-S doctrine, just to refresh people's memory. That's the one that says active service military people cannot sue the government or the Army for anything as long as they're actively employed or actively serving at the time. And of course, we talked about the person who got acid thrown upon her. Well, recently, and a lot of it I would hope has been the groundswell of support and activity of veterans. Senators Kennedy, who was a Republican out of Louisiana, and Senator Hirono, a Democrat out of Hawaii, introduced bipartisan legislation, last month to protect active duty military for medical negligence. And it is the bill, and this is a tremendous progress has been made, because remember, this has been going on for almost 100 years, this Ferris Doctrine. and the bill is being introduced because of Sergeant First Class Richard Steichel, and it's called the Sergeant First Class Richard Steichel Military Medical Accountability Act of 2019, and it allows active duty service members to sue the military for medical malpractice and negligence. And going back to 1950, the Supreme Court decision in Ferris banned active service military from suing the military for medical malpractice or negligence, and it became known as the Ferris Act. This legislation is the first since 1950 that will help overturn that decision. The primary champion is exactly Sergeant Richard Steichel, who actually was malpracticed upon. I don't think there's any doubt about that. They missed cancer and didn't do testing and egregious behavior. Unfortunately, his life expectancy is not that long. But he took it upon himself to do something about it, got congressional support. And remember, one of the shows we had, one of the investigative reporters from out west who was telling how this all occurred and what the progress was. Well, since last month even, there is now this bill out there. We expect that it will be voted on, and we hope that the members of Congress bipartisanly support this. Actually, I understand our commander-in-chief even supports this, and
Wow,
Sergeant
okay.
Steichel actually went to go see him.
Went to see the commander-in-chief?
He did,
Okay.
and the commander-in-chief, from what I understand, did take...
That's President Trump for you folks
Yes,
who don't know
that's
who we're
right,
talking
in
about.
case we don't know that.
Yeah.
And as Senator Hirono said, this Medical Accountability Act of 2019 will finally remove this stain on our country's treatment for those in uniform. And he was proud to introduce the legislation with Senator Kennedy to overhaul this long overdue bill. So it to
great.
me is a great progress that has been made since the last few months. And
Consular, that's wonderful information.
now, some other topics that might be of interest to veterans. I
Sure.
think last time I was here last month, we had the third person into Iraq by telephone. He was here, and he had a hearing loss case, and he was telling us about suicide and how important it is to know about the support systems for veterans, and talked about the 22 people dying every day,
Right.
veterans, you
Suicides,
remember.
right.
And hopefully we'll see some progress over that in the next several months. But as far as rulings, this last month has been very active for legal opinions regarding military. May mean a lot, it may mean nothing, but they're worthy of going through these, because one new bombshell, it's even called the bombshell legal opinion, says that military retirees can no longer be court-martialed. Now, you'd think a retiree retires, how do you
why-
get court-martialed?
yeah.
Well, in fact, it could happen, and does happen, and it happens because many times people go into the reserves to complete the 10 years that they need left, or their 5 years. During that time, as long as the statute of limitations is out there, they could be court-martialed. Well, the retirees could not be court-martialed, who were out of the
they're
reserves.
gone,
These kind of in the gray area could, and so that is what we call an equal protection violation. In other words, not everybody is being treated the same. If you're retired, you're retired. Now, why is that important? Because as we're about to go into some of the individual changes in the laws, some very arcane in the system, adultery is one of those. So, if you were an adulterer, you theoretically could be court-martialed after the fact, which makes no sense.
Right.
If you're free and clear, you've served your country, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's one of the new bombshell opinions, came out of the Marines. And although it may not affect an awful lot of people, the name of that case was Begani, who was court-martialed because of some violations in Okinawa in uniform, but he had been out of the uniform by the time they started to court-martial him. The other thing I'd like to talk about briefly, Cliff, is
Sure.
a recent Supreme Court case, 5-4, that allows President Trump's restrictions on transgender troops to take effect. Now, you may or may not know that our president had issued an order to prevent transgender people who have undergone transgender or gender transition to serve in the military, and which I find ironic since people are willing to give their lives. And there have been several injunctions, which means stays to this by various states, such as California and Washington State. And 4 justices voted against the implementation of this. They were, of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Stephen Breyer, Justice Sotomayor, and Kagan. And the other 5 were the Republicans. We know who those were, who were Republicans appointees.
Tell
Yes.
our people really, Steve, what that means. Because a lot of folks don't understand.
Okay, you
about
mean
the yeah, exactly.
transgender?
Yeah.
So people who think who have been born a certain gender, who believe they, because of their internal being, are not really of that gender, have operations, whether it's going from male to female or female to male with hormones and everything else. Bruce Jenner is a perfect example. Now Caitlyn Jenner. And their real inner being is the gender that they wish to be in. So if they're in the military and they are now and we've heard a lot about it for students, which bathroom do they use? And all of this stuff, and the Obama administration tried to protect the transgender, and then Trump came in, and there was a lot of various going back on what had happened, trying to protect transgender. Those people have changed sex, basically, through operative measures. And it's a real issue. I mean, people feel that they're not the sex of which they were born, and everybody has to go do what they want to do. Well, they can no longer serve in the military. So we've taken
If you've had that change.
If you've had that change.
Can no longer serve.
Can no longer serve. Now, if you're already in, you're sort of grandfathered, quote unquote, you may still be able to be in.
May or not?
Can.
We don't know. You can.
You can.
Okay.
They don't. It does not apply to those who are already in, but you can't get in anymore. You know.
Okay. And the Supreme Court.
His Supreme Court allowed this to go into effect, meaning this proscription, this preventative measure to
Is
allow
the law now.
transgender.
Take this call for me.
So what we are seeing is now an absolute effort made to prevent a group of people from serving in the military of giving of themselves. So that was a 5-4 decision, and kind of.
Can we understand who voted how?
Well,
all you gotta do is when you look
could
at
guess.
the list,
I'm guessing the most recent appointee was one of the 5 that did not, that did vote for the implementation.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Attorney Steve Simon. Let's take a call. Our number, of course, is 312-374-8130. Let's go to Sel. Sel, good afternoon, rather. Hi, Sel.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Always, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Be a part of your spirit, Cliff, and
Thank you.
the energy that you bring to us, as you were doing today through your guests. I wanted to just share with you something that has happened to me. But first, I want to say that I think it's well established that I have been a friend, supporter, a staunch supporter of Jesse Brown Veterans Hospital.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yes, the fact that we have enjoyed Mark McGill, the director of Jesse Brown Hospital on WVON, on this program as a result of me pushing to make that happen.
Right.
Mr. Turner, the regional director of the Veterans Administration, again, has been on WVON as a result of the energy that I was able to put forth, and I was grateful for the opportunity to do that. I have served on the Customer Satisfaction Committee at Jesse Brown VA Medical Center for almost 10 years. I have served on the Strategic Planning Committee as a veterans representative. So again, I'm laying this out to say that what I have getting ready to say is in no way contrary to what I have done all the time in terms of trying to support an institution that is there to serve the veterans for the commitment, the devotion, sacrifice that many of us have made to contribute to this country. We have all heard about the nightmare on Elm Street, the movie. Well, I just experienced a weak nightmare at Jesse Brown Hospital.
Okay, Sal, you got to tell us quickly because we're hip replacement.
And I went through hell. I was there for 7 days.
Okay.
My room didn't get cleaned up but one time during that 7 days. My bed didn't get changed but one time during 7 days. The nurse who was assigned to me was administering a blood thinner, which was supposed to have been administered in my abdomen. She was putting it in my stomach. I asked for a change of pajamas one morning. It took her an hour and a half to come back, but prior to that, I went to the front desk and asked for the pajamas myself after an hour of waiting. Got it. Saw her.
So what
half
we're
hour
gonna
later.
listen. You know,
Yes.
I know you. I know all
Yes.
you have done relative to this show and heroes in general. We've
Yes.
got it. We're out of time, but we're going to get back to you because I think even Steve would like to.
Right, and
yeah,
and this
uh-huh.
is not uncommon, unfortunately. And in fact, the former VA doctor who was leading, who left the administration, wants to he's big push to privatize care at People VA, and he's just written a book. We could talk about that next time.
That's great.
Because the care a lot of times is abysmal.
Will you help us with Sal?
Sure, of course.
Okay, you hear that, Sal? Okay.
Yes. Well, my intent is not to necessarily sue them. Is to improve
Well,
on
we'll
the-
talk
on the
about it.
delivery.
We're
Okay.
going to do something.
Appreciate you.
You know, no, we
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
you. We appreciate you. What all you have done.
Thank you much.
Absolutely. Thank you for calling. Again, Consular, as always.
We're out of time.
Great information. Great information. Thanks so
No
much.
problem. Thanks so much for having me, and next time we'll talk about other topics. And thanks again.
Absolutely. And thank you because you ran down
Cliff, take
so
that call
many
on,
things that we needed. We'll be back with more. Stay